Welcome to the Awakened Heart Podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Walters. Get ready to create magic and miracles as you lean into your heart's desires. I believe not only does the heart want what it wants, but it knows. This show is a weekly deep dive into what it means to live from an awakened heart. I'll be sharing inspiring stories and real conversations with people just like you, who have turned the ordinary into the extraordinary. My mission is to show you how you too can be connected and heart-centered in every area of your life. Your journey to aligning with more love, more joy, and your wildest dreams come true starts now. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Awakened Heart Podcast. And boy, I've got a treat for you today. This is going to be such a really interesting conversation. It's something that I haven't had this conversation about this type of thing, I don't think yet, since its inception. And it's something that we're seeing happen in our world more and more today, the convergence of AI. And what does that mean for us individually? What does it mean for humanity? And my guest today is a wealth of information, and it's so cool. Like, my mind's been opened up to so many things that I didn't even know before. I've known today's guest, Ron Bienvenu. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. It's got that little Cajun French going there. And today, I swear to God, I feel like he lives, or where he's from is in New Orleans, because literally we've skipped spring here in Michigan. 7 long months of winter, and we skipped spring and we have gone into New Orleans type, Florida type heat and weather. So I went from being freezing cold to like stifling hot in humidity that I could cut with a chainsaw. That's how thick it is. And the bugs, they came early. But anyway, back to today's conversation. I've known Ron for a number of years now, and to be honest, he's always been a bit of an enigma. We first met at the Whaler in Venice Beach. And from that moment on, I knew he was someone who didn't just think outside the box. He set the whole damn thing on fire. Over time, I've had the chance to visit him in New Orleans, dive deep into his world, and integrate some of the big ideas we'll be exploring today. His new book, The Fifth Shock, is a philosophical wake-up call for anyone sensing that something fundamentally is shifting in our world, but can't quite name what it is. And trust me, Ron names it. In our conversation, Ron and I dive into how AI is impacting human identity and why we urgently need a new economic models like universal behavioral income. He shares his vision for integrating human wisdom into AI systems and the need for a digital bill of rights to protect our individual freedoms in this new era. We also discuss the challenges of innovation in a digital world, the frustrations with governance and the media, and the powerful lessons of father-daughter bonding that anchor his work. If you're curious about how technology intersects with spirituality and what it means for our future, this episode is a must listen. And if you think his ideas about technology in the future are powerful, wait until you hear the story he shares about his daughter, a storm in Tulum, and a poem that left me with chills. This conversation is part mind-bending, part mythic, and all heart. Hey, Ron, welcome to the Awakened Heart Podcast.
It's good to be here, Nancy. You look terrific. Been a while.
Thank you. It's been a while. Now, Ron and I have known each other personally for a number of years. And to be honest, you have always been an enigma. There is nobody like Ron. The first time I met you in Venice Beach at the Whaler, I think
remember.
oh my gosh, you were celebrating a friend's birthday, or was it your birthday? It was
My friend Joe was in town
Yes.
from New York. And
Yes.
yeah,
It's
we were
okay.
celebrating a birthday. I was probably pretty drunk, and your gorgeous ass walked in, and Joe and I both went, "What is that?" And Joe went to talk to you. He walked up to you and said hi, and then I'm like, "Ah." And it turns out we were neighbors. So it was a fun,
Yes.
serendipitous meeting because you are equally interesting. From the first conversation, I knew we were going to be friends. So
Oh, thank you. And you were dressed all in like your southern, like you were going to a horse race in
yeah,
the South, and you should have had a mint julep in your hand.
I
Yes.
remember it.
Yes. And you were renting a place near the beach, so I could walk right over and see you. And you're just like Yeah, you had such a personality. You do have such a personality. There's no
Thank you.
one really quite like you. And
Oh,
then I got
goodness.
luckily the opportunity to come join you for Jazz Fest a couple years ago in your beautiful loft style apartment in New Orleans, and that was a lot of fun. And then I moved up to Portland, and then we went our separate ways. We still remained in touch, and I do want to talk about your birthday in Tulum because you sent me that amazing story about you
Hmm.
and your daughter, and
Yep.
then we'll go into your LSU days and that poem that you wrote, and that you're very involved in that. So, and then he reached out to me recently, and he has this new book, The Fifth Shock, following up from the Fourth Shock, and it's very aligned in what we talk about here at the Awaken Heart podcast. If I could talk today, the Awaken Heart podcast is about all things awakening. So it's awakening to the truth of who we are. It's awakening our hearts, connecting to spirituality, sovereignty, all these ways that we can connect with each other. Our souls are so bright and shining, and there's a lot going on in this world right now. A lot of times we're like 300 feet in the air looking down, and that's the bigger way to look at what's going on the world stage. But we are still part of this 3D reality. Well, how do we navigate this? And there's a lot of things happening now exponentially, and that is the AI, the introduction to AI. And there's different factions that are like, oh yes, AI. Oh, let me put the glasses in my eyeballs. Let me implant it in my brain. Like they literally are going there. And then there's ones that are against it, totally against it. Like, it's evil, it's Satan, it's 666 kind of thing. So how do we work together? Like it's coming no matter how much we want it or we don't want it. It's going to come. Now, I'm a person that never wants like the robot, like what is it, the Terminator? What was that movie where the robots take over? I don't
Well, there's the
want,
Terminator, there's the
yeah,
Matrix.
the Matrix. Yes.
Yeah, the Matrix and the Terminator are two different dystopian futures of man and machine
Yes.
relations.
And
Yep.
it's happening super fast. I mean, I use ChatGTP, but like how much is it? It's gleaning off of us and it's learning so fast. And I liked your quote. Wait, where is it? Go through culture shifts. I wrote down it. If machines can see your soul, are we still free?
Truth.
It's very truthful. And then we just before we hit record, no etiquette.
Right.
Did I say that right? No
Yeah.
etiquette.
Yeah.
It's called wisdom. And
Yeah. Basically, the point is that Homo sapiens are giving way to something different, and it's a new archetype. And Homo noeticus, the term noeticus, is basically Latin for wisdom. So what I'm arguing is that it's not enough to be a thinking man. We now have to become wise men and women. And and wisdom comes from the soul. Wisdom comes from the heart. Wisdom is not math. Then that's the advantage we have over the machines is the machines are great at data and information, but they're terrible at knowledge and wisdom because they don't know how to do it. They don't care. They have no moral compass. They have no way to incorporate pain into learning and growth. So they can't recurse. They can't have a recursive nature where as a soul, as a human, I can go out, do something stupid, get my butt kicked, come back, reevaluate, integrate, and learn from it. And I'm a wiser person. My shirt says that which does not kill you makes you stronger. Right. So it's Nietzsche's
mhm.
old admonition. It's quite interesting, but we're losing a lot of that. In my version of Homo noeticus, there's another version, an archetype that I talk about in the book, which is fascinating. It's called Homo deus. Homo deus is Noah Yuval Harari's idea that we're going to merge with the machines, and Homo deus means man becomes God. So
Mm.
he's saying Homo sapiens are coming to an end, and we're going to become godlike through integration with our technology. My critique of that archetype is that it has no soul. He just wants to eliminate pain, death, suffering. That's not humanity. And it's not even the machines. The machines can't even benefit from that because if there is no learning, true learning, recursive learning through pain and experience, the machines have nothing to do. So I kind of take a separate road from Harari, who is brilliant, by the way. And if that book is a brain burner, but I don't agree with all of his outcomes. But he does a good job of pointing out some of the problems and the potential. So I wrote this book because after 60 years of living hard and crazy and wild and doing every dumb thing I could think of twice, it dawned on me that maybe it's time for me to start giving back and sharing my experiences. But I'm concerned about the future, the near future. I mean, if you read Kurzweil's latest book, the singularity where machines surpass mental human capacity, he's predicting it's 2029.
Oh,
And,
wow. I can see that.
yeah, well, the current growth rates,
Mhm.
is exponential. So it's time. We don't have a lot of time to start talking about what kind of world we want to live in 10 years from now. Our kids are going to live in a fundamentally different world. We need to start addressing AI. I'm not anti-AI at all. I love it. I think it's like a gun. I'm a little guy. A gun evens the playing field. But AI is not moral. It's not evil. I talk about that in the book. Can AI be evil? Not in its current form. Could it evolve into something that could be evil? Yes, possibly. And certainly when we start integrating quantum computing with what I call the stack. And the stack is an important concept I probably should bring up. The stack is not a network. It's a network of networks. It's all the digital infrastructure that is tracking your every move. It's tracking us right now. It knows when I click my mouse. It knows when I'm talking. It knows when I'm not. So there is a digital twin being built of every human that's online. And I point out that if you're born today, your entire life, before you're even born, they're capturing data about you. And you don't own that data. This is one of the problems I have. It's a sovereignty issue. It's if I create the data, it's mine. It should pay me, not Google should be paying me as my agent to monetize my digital presence and paying me for my behavior. But it's inverted right now. It's very similar to what happened in the Industrial Revolution. Marx, I am not a Marxist. I hate the takers. I'm a maker. Let me point this out, by the way, before I go into the Industrial Revolution. I always say there's two kinds of people in the world, makers and takers. And the way I explain that is very simple. When you have a child, you literally create love. The term making love is not a misnomer. You make this amazing amount of love. It's indescribable to anyone who's never had a child. And it's just amazing. Now, when you have a second child, you don't take love from the first child and give it to the second one. You just create more love. Capitalists do the same thing with wealth. You don't have to have a zero-sum pie. You don't have to take from your neighbor to make. But the takers, socialists, communists, Marxists, that's their game. And so I'm really anti-Marxist. However, Marx was right. His prescription for the solution was horrible, but his diagnosis of the problem was prescient. In that he said, if I went to work in a factory in the industrial era, in the Industrial Revolution, and I lost an arm, the owner of the factory, tough luck, bro. Go home. I'm going to get somebody else. No social net, no safety. I can't pay for my kids. So it wasn't just because the workers, as Marx pointed out, were creating the wealth, but they were getting none of it. And so we have this similar situation here where the living souls are creating the wealth, but we're not getting any of it. And that's not just, and it's not sustainable as a social framework. So I call for in the book, I call for a universal behavioral income as opposed to a universal basic income, which most theories are based on taxation and what I consider to be theft. Behavioral income is your behavior, your DNA. Every child that's born, let's sequence their DNA. It costs nothing these days and give them a digital wallet. And anytime somebody accesses that data with your permission or your agent's permission, you could have a blanket, okay, Google, you are managing my digital information. You pay me 30 cents on the dollar.
Mm.
Microsoft calls you up and says, I'll pay you 40 cents on the dollar. Apple says, I'll pay you 50 cents on the dollar. So you have a market for your data. You
Yeah.
have an agent that represents you. And anytime somebody uses your DNA data or any other
Mhm.
your data, you get paid. Advertising, everything. So instead of taking money from taxpayers, you just provide behavioral data and that is your income.
Mhm.
And it may not be substantial. It may very well be substantial. It would depend. But think of a child in Bangladesh, a notoriously
Yes.
poverty-stricken country, $100 a month if somebody was using their DNA. And remember,
Mhm.
thinking about DNA, just as an aside, DNA data in and of itself is marginally valued. But what studies are really interested in is longitudinal studies about how your DNA expresses itself, epigenetics, over time. So they're going to keep using your data throughout your lifetime. That's a foundation for a basic income. A kid in Bangladesh can make $100 a week, $100 a month.
Mhm.
That's real money out there. So, and it's a more fair system. So
Yeah, it's a slave
that's
system now.
that's what kind of got me to write this book was just
Mhm.
this sense of injustice and it's causing political schisms. I mean, I think what Trump represents is he's tapped into this angst that there's a digital world where we have trillionaires and then we have people can't even pay their bills and they can't put their kids through school. And the schools they send them to, they teach them all the wrong things. They're teaching them how to be cogs in a wheel instead of thinking spiritual beings. And that's why I was excited to do your show because spirituality is the answer to the future for human AI dyad. You cannot put the AI genie back in the bottle. I don't even advocate it. But what you can do is have the human, so a dyad is a symbiotic relationship. Human AI dyad. AI handles data and information, humans handle knowledge and wisdom. And together we can do some really radical things. I think you'll have your own personal AI agent that will manage it. We don't even need Google anymore. We need the infrastructure. The problem you and I have is we can't spend billions and billions of dollars to build an infrastructure. But it's like the electrical system. We can't afford to build the electrical system, but we can leverage it. And I think the same thing's going to happen. We're going to have our personal AI agents managing our digital self. And remember this, like I said, if you're a child born today, before you're born, you're already digital. And after you're dead, your digital self doesn't die. It keeps going. They can keep using your data. They can keep.
Yes.
So it's a very bizarre, and so what I'm arguing for in the book is we need protocols. We need covenants between AI and humanity, where humanity is coded in as the prime, that humanity is driving it. And I don't think we're having enough discussion around that issue. AI is just going to do what it's good at, efficiency. I'll say this. I keep talking about data, information. The way I describe it to people, and you've probably heard it before, but you can have data and not have information. But you cannot have information without data. You can have information and not have knowledge, but you can't have knowledge without information. You can have knowledge and not have wisdom, but you can't have wisdom without knowledge. So this is the AI dyad. Let them handle all the data, but we have to be programmed into the AI. The human factor has to be programmed into the AI as the spirit. And so I think you're going to see, and I have a whole chapter on this, by the way, in the book, on the rebirth of spirituality. Jesus as an archetype of suffering, Odin as an archetype of suffering. Thank you. Yeah. My girlfriend made the cover. It's pretty cool. So,
It's a spiral.
Yes.
That's what life is.
Yes. And it's a black hole, or is it spewing or sucking in? It's kind of a paradox there. But so it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive, but I am seriously concerned about the lack of oversight and the lack of input by normal people, by people who are suffering and working and providing all the wealth. They're not getting a fair shake. So I think you're going to see. I actually wrote a letter last week to Senator Josh Hawley, who was threatening to break up Meta. I explained to him why it's not a terrible idea, but if you just break up Meta, you're not solving the problem. You're just creating a hydra. You cut one head off, you'll have two now. And so you've got to address the core function. The core function is that human agency is not being programmed into the stack, as I call it. And the stack is not evil. The stack is just what it is. It's a network of networks that tracks all digital data about all living humans. It's taking on a life of its own, and it's sucking the soul out of you. The stack has turned pornography, in loneliness, into pornography. They're monetizing loneliness.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. And so we need to, as a race, that's why I wrote the book, it's time to have that discussion, because it is coming really, really fast. And the outcome is not certain. That's the challenge.
Yeah, and you mentioned something. Well, that's why one of the writer strike happened, and I know I used to do a lot of SAG background work in commercials, and they were doing this whole thing where they would create a AI version of yourself, just pay you once and use it through infinity. Through
Of course.
infinity, it's like, no. And what you were talking about, pay us every time you use this image.
Yes.
So you're selling away your image for life for like $300 or something like that. It's not worth it. And then you were talking about Meta and how you just wrote to Facebook. In your book, you were talking about TikTok, because there's been this whole thing with TikTok in United States wanting to buy it from China or to ban it here. And you explained it so well. And I've heard this before about how it's not about like the content, but it's about control. Can you go into the little TikTok phenomenon? It's that
Absolutely.
came up?
Absolutely. So yeah, there is a pretty good discussion in the book. The issue is not, like you said, the content. It's not cat videos and teenagers doing silly things. It's the record of what people are doing online, and then how a government like China could use your behavior that they understand to influence you in important things like elections. And it's already being done, as we all know.
Yeah.
And so that's the government's
2020.
issue. I mean, why is the most powerful government in the world so concerned about something so trivial? Well, it's not trivial when you get down into the implications of digital rights and the ability to influence people in real time. And that's the fear. Same with Grindr. Remember, we had the whole issue with the gay
Yeah.
site that they didn't want foreign governments owning it. So in case they wanted to blackmail citizens. So there's just a lot of geopolitical issues. And that might be a good segue into another issue that is problematic is these companies, unlike Standard Oil, when the government broke up Standard Oil, I say in the book, John D. Rockefeller was worth 3% of US GDP in 1911. If he was worth 3% of GDP today, he would be worth about $900 billion.
Wow.
He would be worth more than Musk, Bezos, Arnold combined. Just to give you a sense of how powerful this guy was.
Yeah.
But yet the government broke up his company, Standard Oil, because Teddy Roosevelt, the president at the time, who reminds me a lot of Trump, by the way, they have very parallel, bombastic, no nonsense, speak directly. Teddy Roosevelt walk softly and carry a big stick. One day I might explore that combination on compare and contrast the two. But Roosevelt had an army. And Rockefeller didn't. Rockefeller had bribed every congressman. He'd pay for every election. He was bulletproof. But Roosevelt saw him as a threat and used an army. Rockefeller's problem was all of his assets were in the United States. Today, you don't have that issue. So what are you going to do? Look, I'll give you a real example. In 2010, BP spills oil off the coast of Louisiana. Or in the Gulf. Do we call it Gulf of Mexico? Or do we call it Gulf of America these days? But at the time it was the Gulf of Mexico. And what happened? I have it from good advice that the CEO of British Petroleum flew to Louisiana in a fishing camp in Venice, Louisiana. And the federal government said, you're going to pay us a $40 billion on top of the billions you're going to spend to remediate and, fix everything. And the CEO of BP said, tell you what, you can have it. And the government's like, what do you mean? We're just bankrupted. We don't need it. We have enough assets around the world. We don't need our American subsidiary. So if you want to bankrupt it, it's yours. So they got a slap on the wrist, and that's about it. Because the U.S. was not going to go to England and invade England to seize the corporate headquarters of British Petroleum. So technology has allowed corporations, like the big tech firms, to spread risk globally, and governments remain parochial. They are geographic in nature. So even the U.S. government doesn't have the reach globally to curtail these companies. So you have an imbalance between political power and economic power, which is being exacerbated, which was accelerated by the advent of digital information. The fourth shock talks a lot about that train of events. But how would you rein in Meta? What are you going to do? They'll leave. They'll say, if the U.S. makes us illegal, we'll go to Spain. They need the jobs. And they don't have physical hardware. So you have a problem.
Yeah.
And the offset, I hate to say it, especially for you and me, but the offset is you need a more efficient global government. I hate to say it, but you need enough political power to offset this economic power. Otherwise, citizens will just be trampled on. I talk about in the second part of this book. This is part one, which kind of states the problem. Part two is what I consider the solutions to some of the problem. And I talk about node states that citizens might find themselves tied more to a network than to a country, because that network might provide them value. They might pay, instead of me paying taxes to the United States, the node state might pay me taxes from my behavior. So I can see these strange non-governmental nation states evolving through the stack. And that has tremendous implications for government powers. It's going to be the strangest. I think we're going to produce more wealth in the next 10 years than maybe we've produced in all of human history. I can explain how. And it's not a fantasy.
I was just going to ask how. Can
Well,
I be a part of it?
yes, you will be. And all these ideas of universal behavioral income and things like that will be part of it.
Now,
It's
how does that differ from the Chinese, not to lose your train of
No,
thought,
go ahead.
but the whole social credit system?
That's creepy as
Yeah.
I was about to get
Okay.
expletive there.
Okay.
That's creepy
We
stuff, man.
can
That's
we
Black
can
Mirror stuff
swear
all
here.
day.
Yeah.
So it's different because in China, you don't have a choice. The
Yeah. Oh,
government
yeah.
mandates that you
Yes.
are part of this system.
It is
A
Black Mirror.
node state would conceivably be voluntary. You choose to be part of the node state that then provides things for you. So that's how it could be different. But how are we going to create wealth? I'll explain. In 1840, oil was worthless. No one wanted it. If it was on your land, you burned it because your cattle would get in it or your pets or whatever. It was toxic. The La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles are just oil that dinosaurs fell into and died. So oil was completely useless. However, in the 80s, a Canadian engineer figured out that you could turn oil into kerosene. And the reason humanity wanted kerosene was for light. Prior to that, the primary source of light was whales. So we were slaughtering the whale population and almost to extinction. And so it was a better solution. And then it became the engine of the Industrial Revolution, literally and figuratively. When the internal combustion engine is created a few decades later, it changes everything. It changes politics. It changes power. Think about the Germans and the Japanese prior to World War II. Yeah, they were deranged, racist. Both societies were very racist. But they have no oil. The world was shifting from coal, steam engines, to diesel, and they didn't have any. And so what's the first thing they did when they started the war? They seized oil fields. The Japanese in the Pacific and the Germans. The Germans are approaching Moscow. They're 80 miles from Moscow, and they turned the whole army south. Why? What they're doing? Well, because they were running out of oil. Their blitzkrieg couldn't be fueled. So they were heading to Azerbaijan to get the oil fields down there. So, now, of course, they got stopped in Stalingrad and the rest is history. Oil was driving a lot of their geopolitical decision making. So I say all that because something that was worthless and sitting in plain sight became the most valuable thing on the planet. Well, let's take it to the modern era. In 2009, a very large company, at one point worth $250 billion, which in 2009 was very, very big company, with Northern Telecom. They filed for bankruptcy. When they filed for bankruptcy, Deloitte & Touche was their accountant, the most powerful, famous accounting in the world. And they said the operating business is worth $3.2 billion and the intangible assets, data, patents, historical performance, it was worth $147 million. So you got $3.2 billion, $147 million. When they come out of bankruptcy in 2012, the company sells for $3.5 billion. The data sells at auction for $4.5 billion. The data was worth more than the operating business. The operating business had power plants, power lines, kinds of industrial hardware, and it was worth less than the data. Now, Deloitte screwed that company because if Deloitte had told the CEO the data was worth $4 billion, not $100 million, he might not have had to file for bankruptcy. So, but imagine if you could take that same process and do that to every balance sheet in the world. Well, in that case, you had a 40-fold increase in assets from 100 million to 4 billion, right? And imagine if every balance sheet in the world had a 40x increase on their balance sheet for their intangible assets. You would create this giant asset class, trillions and trillions of dollars, and there would be no offsetting liability. So from an accounting perspective, you would deleverage the global economy, and it's going to happen. And so it's happening every day. I can give you 100 examples of that story. So the problem Deloitte has is they have a vested interest in a dead science. The dead science is accounting. Deloitte & Touche can tell you what a fish is worth. What kind of fish is it? What's the market price for a fish? It's got a shelf life. Is it depreciating? But they can't tell you the value of knowing how to fish. And which is more valuable? Knowing how to fish. So Deloitte is antiquated. Our accounting system is dead. It's broken. It doesn't value the right things. It values industrial era ideas instead of digital era ideas. I'll give you a shining example of this. The top 10 oil and gas companies in the world today are worth roughly $3.7 trillion combined. The largest is Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco is worth $1.7 trillion. So you take Saudi Aramco, which isn't really an oil company, it's a country, but you take that out, the top 9 oil and gas companies, let's go 10 without oil, it's probably worth about $2 trillion. These companies have oil and gas refineries, gas stations, trucks, ships, offshore oil rigs. It's the infrastructure. These are the most capital-intensive businesses the world has ever known, and they're crucial to the global economy. And they're worth $2 trillion. The top 10 information technology companies are worth $18 trillion. They have no assets. Wow. So what is going on, Deloitte? I want to talk to the chairman of Deloitte & Touche. What are you doing? Show me on a balance sheet how this is possible. Companies that have warehouses and silicon chips are worth more than companies that have global energy infrastructure. So your accounting system is broken. It's measuring. So markets are valuing data, but accountants are not. And that's a problem. That is what's called an ontological problem. It is who decides what is valuable. It would change the tax code completely. And so we're measuring the wrong things. But here's the problem. Deloitte's not going to fix that. They are too embedded in the status quo. They would have to kill their business and reinvent accounting. They're not going to do it. The same with the educational system. You think the teachers' unions are going to change the educational system? Absolutely not. They milk it for billions. They're not going anywhere. And I'll give you an anecdote I talk about in the book. I jokingly say, but now we have the conclave and we're waiting for a new pope. I jokingly called the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages the first internet. And because at the fall of Rome, knowledge, especially knowledge of writing, was imperiled. So the Catholic Church and their monasteries kept writing and the science and the knowledge how to write alive. And they did it for a very noble cause. Much like Google didn't set out to screw the world, do no evil, but they're pretty evil now. And so the Catholic Church didn't set out to be nefarious. They were doing good for the world. But what happened is, at that time, technology starts to progress in the Dark Ages, and we're starting to sail ships into the ocean, and we're doing convoys or caravans to China, Marco Polo, and people like that. And so every time you did that, you needed somebody who knew how to read the stars. And the Ptolemaic view of the solar system was the system that we believed at the time. The Earth is the center. The sun and the moon go around in a perfect circle. And that's how God would have it. And this was for 2,500 years. This was trust the science. This was the science. Okay. And the Pope just said what all the idiots say today, trust the science.
People don't
And
trust science anymore.
I say in the book, anytime somebody says trust the science,
Yeah, it's like COVID days.
follow the money. Because I'm
Yeah.
guarantee you that you don't trust science, you test science.
Mhm.
And anybody who says otherwise is a fool or a charlatan or both. So the Pope, his people are the only ones educated to map the stars, because at first it was simple, sun and moon, but then we found stars that were moving erratically in the sky. And then we realized those were planets. And Venus didn't have the decency to go around Earth in a perfect circle. So we had to make a decision. Do we cut the feet to fit the shoes, or do we build a new pair of shoes? Same thing Deloitte's facing. Do you cut the feet to fit the shoes, or do you build a new pair of shoes? They're going to cut the feet to fit the shoes. I guarantee it. And so what the scientists of the day said, no, the Earth is still the center, even though there were theories that the sun was the center. But no, the church discarded that. So it's moving in a perfect circle, but it's doing this like dance. It goes this way for a little while, then it turns on its side, and it goes this way, and then it goes over this way. It was a very complex, and when you start adding planets, more than one, it gets really complex. And that complexity is the first internet, because then anybody who sailed a ship on the ocean, anybody who took a long overland route needed somebody from the Pope's camp to read the stars. Otherwise, you get lost and you'll die. So the Pope monopolized navigational data for 500 years. So he knew every army that was moving. He knew grain. He knew who was starving. He knew who was fighting who. That's how the Catholic Church monopolized all the royalty across Europe and most of the world, to be honest. So they had no interest in changing the system. So when Copernicus comes along in the 50s and says, and he took great pains to suck up to the Pope, by the way. He dedicated his book to the sitting Pope, and he took great pains to suck up. But he said, look, if you just changed your assumptions, if you assume that the sun is the center of the universe at the time, the solar system, and you assume that heavenly bodies can move in elliptical orbits as opposed to perfect circles, I can reduce all this complexity to something anybody can learn. Well, the Pope had no interest in having anybody learn that. So it took him 250 years to stop saying it was evil. I mean, Copernicus died months after publishing his book, but he's lucky he died, because the Pope, in response, launches the Second Inquisition and is burning, heretics at the stake for claiming that, the Earth is not the center and God would do anything silly like put the sun there. So you have the same problems here. The educational system, same problem. The accounting system, same problem. They are legacies from a day that no longer matters, but you can't expect those with a vested interest to be the agents of change. We've got to lead that. People need to come together and say, no, we need a better way. And so that's part of the book. It's not just spirituality, but I never really thought of myself as terribly spiritual. I'm philosophical, always been. And I studied every religion known to man that I could get my hands on, but I never really cared about my soul. I'm like, whatever. You ever seen the movie, Oh Brother Art Thou? He goes, when he said, they pick up the black guy who was playing the guitar and they go, what are you doing out here in the middle of nowhere? And he goes, I just had a meeting with the devil. And he goes, what'd you do with the devil? He goes, I sold him my soul so he could make me a famous musician. And the guy goes, why would you sell your soul to the devil? And the guy goes, well, I wasn't doing much with it. So, so it seemed like a fair trade.
Uh,
So I never put thought into spirituality until I started to understand. And I'm a tech guy. I'm a hacker from way back, from before people even knew what that was. I built my first computer in 1979. I mean, I was a hacker. It began to dawn on me that our real value is our soul. It's our spirituality. And it is that needs to guide AI, not the other way around. Because the other way around will be the extinction of humanity, in my opinion. And it may not be fast. Let me tell you another chapter I have in the second book, which is not published yet, but it's pretty much done. I call it the Temple of Voluntary Extinction. And basically, it's the metaverse. So the metaverse, you're going to take a generation of humans, you're going to put them in front of these kind of machines, and they're going to have the greatest life ever lived, but they're not going to reproduce and they're going to die off. And so the metaverse is a model for getting humans to voluntarily walk into extinction.
mhm.
And so now not all of us are going to do it. And I'm hoping to let people know at least you do it if you want. I'm a libertarian. You want to kill yourself, kill yourself. I don't care.
Yep.
Some of us care. And I think human life and human consciousness is worth preserving. And so that's what these two books are really about. It's a plan of action, a war map of how we take back our sovereignty and build in our souls into our digital selves. And that's what I'm trying to achieve.
And we're seeing that a lot now with where they start softly rolling it out. And it's so obviously for someone like yourself and myself, we see what is happening. See it in our programming on TV. We're seeing it at the airports now. Now they're taking pictures of our faces. They're like, oh, we're going to erase it right away. Oh, are
For
you
sure.
really? Yes. So you can opt out of that. But a lot of times you don't want to cause trouble. But that's the real ID, all that. They're softly rolling it out. They're already doing it. It's already here. And you're seeing people out, they've got those little masks on, they're living their own reality,
Fantasy. Yes.
and the children that are growing up now, instead of being out playing on your bike and coming back when the streetlights are on, they're on their devices. I mean, we're gonna have to.
Let's get a step further if you don't mind.
Yeah.
They're not even fucking anymore. Look at
Ugh,
birth rates across the planet. They're plunging.
yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying that's necessarily even a bad thing
Well, because there's
all in all.
porn.
Yeah. Yes. And so, like, I have a 26-year-old son. He ain't into chicks like I was at 26. I mean, he loves them all, but he spends so much time, and he's just a normal. I mean, he's very smart, and a great kid. But it bothers me that I go get punched in the face, man.
That's how
Go
you
do something
learn.
stupid.
How
Yeah.
you learn.
And yeah,
Make
you're right.
mistakes.
And you should remember this in the fourth shock. I wrote about this. Where did the internet come from? It's important to know its origin. It came from DARPA. It came from the military. It was designed, DARPANet. It was designed to withstand nuclear exchanges. So in the event of a nuclear war, we would need to be able to communicate. So you had so you had this packet idea where you could break digital information into signals, shoot those across the whole globe at the speed of light, and it'll recombinate wherever the location is supposed to go to. So even if vast portions of the infrastructure of this country were destroyed by a nuclear explosion, you would still be able to communicate. That's the beginning of the internet. But it was military. And in the 90s, it was commercialized. That's the third shock of the fourth shock. And it was commercialized. But do you think the NSA doesn't have absolutely every single digital thing in the world? In the world, not just in America. Like, I'd love to talk to like Chinese leaders and say, how do you guys get around that? Because I'm telling you, I know how this thing was built. I know how it works. And I don't see how the NSA has everything. And so you're right. That's what scares me about the stack. That's what I call the stack. It's that in the wrong hands, it could blackmail people. It knows everything. So we need a digital Bill of Rights. We need a digital Magna Carta that limits the power of the stack to keep human agency and human rights. That's where I'm headed with all this. And I think, like I said, I jokingly say I'm entering my third trimester of life. I, 0 to 30, try not to die. And believe me, I came close a few times. But okay, mission accomplished. I was in the military. I was crazy. I was an anarchist. I was sleeping on the floor of a condemned building for years in New York. I was an animal, but I didn't die. And then my second 30 years, so I built families, I built businesses. I've had a wide ranging career, and it's been very interesting. All the while, always very fascinated with technology, philosophy, mythology, and religion. And so I find those, the intersection of all those things is fascinating to me. And so, and now I'm almost 60 and I'm entering my third trimester. And what I want to do is give back to the world. That's my goal now. I've made enough. I have what I need. And I think this is very, very important. In the book, in the first part, I talk about, which I find very interesting. I don't know if it gets enough traction, but there are 4 fundamental forces of the universe: gravity, strong and weak nuclear forces, and electromagnetism. For example, the strong nuclear force keeps electrons in orbit when the electromagnetism would blow them apart. If that force was even a little bit this way or a little bit that way, the universe wouldn't exist. Same with gravity. There's a concept called GUT, Grand Unified Theory of the Universe. You probably heard about it. And it's the idea, it's the force, it's Star Wars. It's that under those 4 things, gravity is how we watch large bodies affect each other. Strong and weak nuclear forces at the atomic level, at the quantum level. Electromagnetism is another force. We don't know what causes any of those things. So the idea is that there's an underlying force, the GUT, it's called, the Grand Unified Theory. And they can't find it. They've been searching for over 100 years. And quantum mechanics and quantum computing might help us there at some point. But right now, it's still a mystery. So I posit in the 5th shot that maybe the scientists are looking for the wrong thing. They're looking for a particle. That's why we have super colliders. They're trying to break atoms down and see if we can find the force particle. But maybe it's not a particle. Maybe it's consciousness. Maybe consciousness is the 5th element that animates all the other 4. So when we talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about some gaga goo goo go save the planet shit. I'm talking about reality itself is the spirit, that the mind animates the universe, not the other way around. And so perhaps consciousness is the underlying force that animates, or whatever causes consciousness animates the other forces. And that's what we should be focusing on. And so I'm fascinated, but we don't know what causes consciousness. We don't, just like we don't know what causes gravity. We know what when we see it, but we don't know what causes it. So I make the argument that maybe we should start exploring that as the main driver of physics, consciousness as physics, not as just spirit. And I think we're going to get there.
Yeah, when you go into the quantum, that the reality, we create our own realities. Is that what you're talking about? Consciousness. So
Yes.
it's just like the particle wave. Until it's observed, it doesn't become something.
Correct.
So we're
Schrodinger's cat.
yeah, we've all been told that we're living this simulation, which is so hard to comprehend. But when you get into the quantum and you get into those, the stuff that we cannot see. I mean, I listen to Joe Dispenza. I hear about you get into this field where all things can manifest instantaneously, and it's so fascinating about that, and we're learning so much more about it. But I wanted to talk about how you talk about sacred recursion. Can you explain what that means and how it applies in a world governed by algorithmic logic?
Sure. Before you do that, I just want to make one quick comment on
Yeah.
quantum mechanics and physics.
Mhm.
I think it was Niels Bohr who said, if you're not outraged by the implications of quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics because it's outrageous.
It's
So,
crazy.
yeah,
This is like nothing solid. Like we don't
yes, it's all an illusion.
we pull in like 1% of, not even 1% of what is filtered through us. Like we filter out 99% of what's coming into our reality.
100%. Absolutely. And that's why I think so great segue into spiritual recursion.
Mhm.
So historically, we have a soul that goes to heaven, whatever your religion believes. But now we're fusing physics with spirituality, and recursion is just looking back on yourself. The problem the stack has, it has no recursive capability. It doesn't learn. It repeats. It looks for patterns. That's what an LLM is, a large language model. It's just looking for patterns. It's not thinking like we think. It's just finding patterns that fit and then doing a very good job of bringing back relevant information based on that. But it's not thinking. It doesn't remember. You can't hurt the stack. It has no concept of pain. It has no concept of memory. It has no concept of morality. So when I talk about spiritual recursion, we need to build that into the stack, that our experiences of pain, hope, sadness, joy, love are built into the stack as a viable, hold on one second, mine almost went up, as a viable balance, counterbalance to simply automated responses. And I don't really have the answer for that. I'm working on the second part about how we would code for that, which might be a little dry for a lot of people. But how would you code? But I do call for, like, for example, a digital Magna Carta, a digital Bill of Rights. So recursion is the ability to go back on yourself and reevaluate from where you were. Computers don't do that. Humans do. And that's the value in life. That's the value in spirituality. That's the only point of being alive, is to experience, grow from that experience. As Nietzsche says, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger.
Mhm.
And struggle is the natural state. Peace, sometimes I get a little carried away, but I say peace is for the dead and the weak. And so struggle is
Why?
because struggle is the natural state. You don't learn from nothing.
Right.
You have to feel. That's what gives us our recursive ability to create morals. This is good, this is bad, because of experience. And
Yeah.
now our conscious brain, which is quite fascinating, we can infer good and bad just through thought experiments, which is the beauty of human consciousness. Whereas most animals, they have to physically experience things before they can learn from them. Humans can imagine pain and suffering because we know what it is, and we build it, the logic of suffering, back into our morality. This is what is good for man. This is what is bad for man. And that's what I mean by spiritual recursion. That has to be embedded in our digital selves somehow. That's what gives the animating force of morality to the humans. And the machines will never do, shouldn't say never, be a long time. Even with the amazing leaps we're making, it's still going to be a while before a machine can feel,
Mhm.
really feel. Now, is that impossible? No. And quantum computing is going to just, it's hard to even imagine at this stage, but you're going to see an AI human dyad that will be partners. That's how I look at it. I'm not trying to become the machine. I don't want immortality per se. The thing about this, what happens to you after you die online? Who owns your data?
Mm.
Where does it go? Do you have the right to have it deleted? Who gets it? You need a will. You have to put this in your will. And who
Wow.
benefits from it? So that has to have a moral construct to it. It can't just be a bunch of zeros and ones and it's not anybody's business. No, it is my business. My life is my business. And literally and figuratively in my world, because the digital self should be generating wealth for me. And so it's not a joke. And let's talk about some really nasty stuff. Child pornography.
Yeah.
You got the weirdos saying, well, why don't we create digital children that aren't real? And then the pervs can entertain themselves with no victim. Okay. Okay. You may have eliminated the victim. That doesn't make it right. At some point, we have to say, we're not about that.
Mhm.
Because it's just sick. But that's a moral
Yep,
decision.
post-biological moral code, you call it.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
And it's disturbing. And the same. I mean, what's going to happen in Hollywood? We both, spent a lot of time in LA and lived in LA. They're going to create, you go online now, all you see is fake, beautiful women,
Mhm.
literally, AI generated models. And and they're perfect and it's crazy. And by the way, that's the other thing. The human is imperfect. That's what we need to
Mhm.
code into our digital selves,
And
the
that's what we
imperfections.
connect to within each other. It's your
Yes,
vulnerability. It's we don't connect to perfection because what is
correct.
that?
And I talked about this the other day. I live in Miami and I've lived in LA and I've lived in New York. And the women, like yourself, gorgeous,
Yes.
gorgeous,
Yes.
everywhere you look. But over the last 10 years, you're a natural beauty. You're real.
Thank you.
All the women start to look alike.
Yeah.
You go to Miami, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And and that's not a human version of beauty. It's the machine's version
Yes.
of what it thinks beauty
You
is.
see them in Beverly Hills too. It's like, "What is that?"
Yes. And it's the imperfections. It's the authenticity that is beautiful in humans, not the the prepackaged, programmed, computer generated beauty. It's disgusting. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying these are disgusting. I don't want to get carried away. They're beautiful and it's what's on the inside that really matters. But it's disturbing to look at times because you go in a club in Miami, everybody looks the same. It's bizarre. So I'm hoping we can inject some of that reality back into our digital models, that authenticity, and try to,
Mm.
how do we code in authenticity
Yes.
in the stack?
Well, I'm seeing a lot more authenticity coming online as far as women that haven't had injectables or they're talking about menopause or they're talking about, real things. I'm seeing that come on, but it does seem like sometimes stuff comes up in my feed. I'm like, where the heck is this coming from? Is this really online? Do women actually do this? I don't know if you know Celeste Barber. I think that's her name. She always finds like all these like models doing these silly things. Like there was one today with this beautiful girl had this band and she was taking her legs over her head and then she imitates it. She wears the same thing. She's like a normal sized woman and she's doing it. It's like she makes fun of it. It's so funny.
What's her name? I'm gonna have to look it
I
up.
think
That
it's
sounds fun.
Celeste Barber. I think she had her own television show for a little bit. She had a little sitcom. I'll send you. I'll
Yeah,
send
you
you a
send me
link.
a link. I would
You'll
love to follow
appreciate
it.
it.
Yeah.
So
And
that. Oh, go ahead.
no,
No,
I
no,
was
no.
going to
Go.
say that's just one of the many challenges we face with the digitization of everything is the homogenization
Yeah.
of beauty, of goodness, of morality. That's what I'm saying. The human soul cannot become a machine. It can share the world with the machine, and we have a lot to give the machines. They can't exist without us, by the way.
Mhm.
What would they do without us? Who they gonna manipulate themselves? Like some kind of network circle jerk? I mean, what is that? I don't know. And so that's why it's in the machine's interest, not that they have that kind of thinking, that humans remain creative and novel. But the machine's intention is efficiency. And efficiency means lack of friction. Lack of friction means lack of novelty. And so in the second book, give you one more tidbit here. Is I posit what I call the law of network supremacy. Basically, it's this idea that a network, according to Metcalfe's law, a network's value is directly proportional to the number of nodes on a network. Simple way to describe that. What is the value of the first telephone ever made? Zero. Who are you going to call?
Right.
So when you have a second phone, you now have utility. But when you have a third phone, you don't have a plus one. You actually have 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 1. So the number of nodes increases the utility of the network exponentially. And you get to 1,000 phones, and now you have incredible possibilities. So this is Metcalfe's law. It's brilliant. And so I take Metcalfe's law and I show that. So now let's take a second part. What is the value of innovation? So the value of innovation, solve a problem. It takes time, it takes capital, it takes ideas, it takes effort. In traditional economic models, if you invented something, it would decline on a curve that was convex. So it would go like this over time as competition comes in, as your patent wears out, the value of your innovation depreciates over time. But it's a reasonable curve outward bode. What happened with the internet, and I talk about this in the fourth shock, is it inverts that curve. So that curve is no longer convex, it's concave because you get a good idea, it gets on the internet, everybody copies it. So the value of innovation has been depreciating at an accelerating rate. And when you chart this, a network's value starts very low, 1 unit, but goes up in an exponential curve. The value of innovation used to go like this, so you would capture all this value in economic theory. Now it goes like this, so you're only capturing this amount of value. And when the number of nodes on a network exceeds the rate of depreciation of innovation, the network captures all the value. And that's what you're seeing. That's why Meta and all those guys are worth trillions of dollars, because they're capturing innovators' value more than the innovators are. And so you have a problem because in a completely efficient network, you would have no more innovation. And no more innovation means nothing to talk about, no more uniqueness. So the machines are plotting their own destruction, at least in their current form, by being overly efficient. And so one of the things I talk about in the second book is innovators, not just individuals, but innovation needs to be protected on the networks. The networks have to give more back to the innovators. You're an innovator. You have a show. You're sharing knowledge and wisdom, but the networks make more money than you do on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And 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 it's just not just.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big problem. And again, it's going to. I hate to say it, but it's going to take a Marxist level revolution, at least of ideas. But usually ideas lead to blood. But it's going to take a revolution to change this. I don't see Zuckerberg handing the keys over to the castle
No.
anytime soon, and the government's all on the take. So I don't see then who's going to do it unless they have an incentive. Now, the beauty of some of the things I write about is the tax implications are giant. Let me give you one example. I do a Google search. I'm sitting here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Where do the taxes get paid? They get paid in California. So the economic activity, according to Google, occurs on their servers, but that's not right. The economic activity occurs when I, wherever I am, get online. So the state of North Carolina is being robbed of tax dollars that would support local endeavors. So that's how you get the politicians excited, because the one thing they all love is taxing the shit out of things. And so, but it's a fairness. And so I even took this idea to a very well-known sue lawyer, a personal injury lawyer. I said, can we sue Google? And he said, did you click I accept? I said, yeah. He goes, you can't sue Google. They have the best lawyers in the world. You're fucked. And then we got to talking. I said, but what if the state of North Carolina sued Google for misappropriating tax dollars that should be driven at the local level? He goes, states could sue Google. And so, because the state of North Carolina doesn't have a deal with Google, and the state of North Carolina could argue that the taxable event occurred here, not there. So, there are some lines of attack that could be very interesting and quite radical, but you're going to need a Teddy Roosevelt style government. Like Trump Trump's a phenomenon, but his style is probably not going to go out of fashion anytime soon because he speaks for the working class. He speaks for the real citizens. He doesn't speak for the techno elite and the bankers. So that's going to be, and I think that's what really rubs the establishment the wrong way, is that Trump's the beginning. He's not the end. And we might even get a better one who's a little less obnoxious and more
I
palatable.
love him. I love him.
I find him humorous. And by the way, I've
I
met him.
just
I've met
like
him several times.
yeah, I
And
have too, and I just like that that's when I started paying attention to politics 2020 because we know what happened that year. I'm like, "I better pay attention."
yeah,
And people are like, "Oh, you mean tweets." I liked it because he would just say whatever came out of his mouth. He wasn't all polished like a snake oil salesman,
yeah.
and, yeah, I like him. I like everything that comes out of his mouth. I mean, is he perfect? No, of course
No,
not, but
no.
I just like that he's real, okay?
Yeah,
And he is
same.
for the working class.
Same. I am not a Trumper. My
No,
girlfriend is
me
a
neither.
massive Trumper. I am not, but I'm not a hater either.
Uh-huh.
And I think people let the personality distract them from the issues.
Anything.
And the issues are human sovereignty, citizens' rights, and we are not a product. We are living beings, and we have a say in
Yeah.
how people use our data, our tax dollars, our time. So I think Trump's tapped in, and like I said, I don't think he started. This is a movement. It's a movement of human
Yeah.
sovereignty, and it's global in nature, and it's going to continue to accelerate. And I think that's what kills the establishment. If they kill Trump, it doesn't end the
No,
problem, as
no.
we know somebody tried several times.
Yep.
I don't know who, but
And the media, how they're so against him. It's all like I mean, it's CIA. I
I
mean,
will
it's all
I
programs.
would say this: there's two great disappointments in my lifetime on a existential or just really, really global social level. The first is Congress. Congress does nothing. They don't pass budgets. They don't pass bills. They leave everything to the executive and the judicial. They're doing nothing. Congress is a waste, and it has given up its power of the purse to the executive. It's given up its ability to create laws to the judiciary, and it's a broken institution, and it's really sad. And I don't know how we fix it because it's too easy to get elected and all you want to do is get reelected and they don't have to do anything. It's a travesty and it's a serious problem for human agency in this, especially going forward. The second is the fourth estate. The press is disgusting. They
Very much.
sold themselves out for what? For what? To put some globalist agenda? Why can't we have
Mhm.
a real press that just yeah,
No.
beat the shit out of Trump, but beat the shit out of Biden too. You can't.
Exactly.
So what happened? What happened? When the New York Times
Pharmaceutical
is a
dollars,
joke.
big pharma dollars, big tech
It's
dollars.
yeah, big pharma and big tobacco, right?
Yep.
Big tobacco took over
Yeah,
food. Big pharma, yeah, and it's so infuriating
yeah.
that we don't have a free press.
No.
And there has to be a business model in there somewhere where there's an economic incentive to
Right.
create, and you see it. You see it online. You're seeing
Independent
voices
media.
coming about, and it's going to be an evolutionary process. But man, have they done a giant disservice to humanity over
Yes.
the last 30 years. It's
Mhm.
disgusting and disgraceful. And,
And they got away with it because there were no other voices out there like,
yeah,
"Oh, the
yeah,
news."
yeah. If we're going to shoot, insurance executives, let's start shooting some media executives.
Right.
And so I didn't call for violence, but
No.
they have to answer. I mean, and what do? You have the government do it? No, the government that they should be a check on the government. So if the government tries to fix media, then it looks like the government's trying to control media, which possibly is. And so we don't want that either.
Mm-mm.
So when will the free market get off its ass and create meaningful media that is nonpartisan? And and just tell the truth as you see it and do the work, do the research.
Yes, there are
It's
some
more
out
needed
there.
than it's more needed than ever. So those are my two big disappointments of the American system in the last, 20, 30 years. I've just seen it erode. Think about it. When's the last time Congress passed a budget? Do you know? They don't know.
No.
How are we missing trillions of dollars? I
So
mean,
it's so theatrics over there. I'm just glad it's I mean, like I said, I can sleep better at night now because where we were going before and how they pushed this vice president into a president, like
oh, disgusting.
it was so disgusting. You could see through it. She did nothing. She knew nothing, but yet here's this savior, and everyone fell in line with it. And
They
thank
gave her $1
God
billion.
America.
They gave her $1
Yes.
billion.
And she misappropriated how much was missing? 20 million or something?
It's criminal.
She was spending that on celebrities to like endorse
Friends.
her.
She
They
was,
weren't real.
yes. No. So she
So,
gave money and then she go gets a job consulting with them. She
oh
gets the
my
money back.
God, it was just I'm like, but luckily I was so happy that America saw through it despite this whole like honeymoon phase and putting her up there and like the cognitive decline of the former president and them covering it up. Just it was so obvious. And I'm so glad we're here right now where we are.
We dodged a huge bullet
We
there, as
did.
not just America, the
Upside
world.
down
I know
world.
the
Yeah.
world. I've lived in Europe. I have great European friends. I'm gonna see a bunch of them this weekend. They're coming in for a wedding. A bunch of French and Germans, and
Yeah.
they have their opinions of Trump, but you might not like him. But boy, I tell you, if you'd had the other one, corruption would have just
Kept
continued.
going.
It's still corrupt, and
Yes.
it's so frustrating. And so now you got me all.
Well, Europe is falling, like Germany, like, well, like thought police in Ireland, like
England. I
UK,
mean,
what is going on in the UK? Like,
Canada. What the
yeah,
fuck is Canada doing?
exactly. Trudeau, well, he was a plant from the World Economic, where was it?
Yes.
WEF? Yeah,
Yeah,
like
World
they're all over.
Economic Forum or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, they're all just
Yeah,
disgusting.
Davos, like, come on, we need, like you're saying, like when we heard one world government, we're like, what the hell? It's because of what the psychopaths who have been trying to create the one world government, the WHO, the
Yes,
WEF.
they're doing it for power and not for the
Yes,
people. And
exactly, and
so
we need
we
one
need
of
a
the people.
grassroots. Look, I'm telling you, you start when you get me talking like this, it bothers me because you're getting to the point where you need a fucking revolution, where you got to start blood in the streets if the political class can't get their head out their ass and stop robbing us blind
Yeah,
across the globe.
yes,
And so it frustrates the hell out of me, and that's not good for anybody. But we have a democratic system, but if it's rigged, then you're killing faith in institutions, the media, Congress,
I have no faith in it.
elections, and that's you're the salt of the earth. You're not a anarcho communist. You're not an anarchist. You're a working person. You care about the world. You get up every day and you do your best. These are the people who are getting shit on. The whack jobs, they're stealing from the government. They crossing the border illegally. The
Mhm.
rich don't care. Basically, the Democratic Party has become the ultra rich stealing money from the middle class to bribe the poor
Look
for
at their bank
votes.
accounts from
Yeah,
going in to going out, like,
yeah. And it's
AOC,
disgusting.
come on, how much is she worth now? Why? Crazy eyes.
Nancy Pelosi? Come
Yes.
on.
Yeah,
Come on. Come on. So
exactly.
so it well, how do you fix it? Elections? If the elections are rigged, that's why I don't know if there's, I know people love the idea that somebody somewhere used to be God. Now it's some cabal of, Illuminati. Somebody controls the world. That's what we
Mhm.
want to believe. And maybe it's true because they had to let Trump get elected because one more stolen election, you would have had a serious,
Yeah.
serious problem. So what they tried to do is kill him. And but when they fail that, you better just shut up and let the nature take its course, or you're going to have a revolution on your hands,
Mhm.
and it's not going to be pleasant. Anyway, and
We've
I've
been
got
so
kids, and
gaslit. Yeah, we've been
yeah,
so gaslit. "Oh, you're gonna kill grandma," and misinformation, medical misinformation, and you're like, "We're gonna keep you locked in your house, you can't go anywhere, and, we're gonna kill all these people." It's just we had enough, like, gaslighting up the like, half
yin
of the
yang, yeah,
country was gaslit, and I know a lot of the country was so grateful that he got elected. Like we said, it's not like he's not this coming, he's not the savior, but he's a cog in the machine that was just marching on. Had that cackling hyena gotten elected, well, first of all, I would, oh my God.
oh,
We would have just been so much like upside down where we're returning to like, okay, we're returning to like common sense in a lot of ways. And I hope it continues along this way after Trump is out of the office and the next leaders are out. Like common sense, like boys can't become girls and we got to protect women. There are biological differences. We don't need like the whole, like, what is it? The trans movement, which is it's just confusing kids in school and all that. And just like, let's have common sense.
yes, a return of common sense would be
Yeah.
very nice. But and if we don't, I get the sense that things are reaching a tipping point.
Yeah.
And people are nervous about the existential impacts of AI and other things. They need common sense. We need common sense. I'm hopeful like you. I got kids and I want them to, do well and thrive and live in a world where they can express themselves and have liberty but genuinely worry. And we'll see. And I'm trying to do my part with this book, just pointing out, at least on this level, where we can hopefully make the world a little better, safer, and more meaningful for generations to come.
Absolutely. And I do want to touch on that because you did send me your experience in Tulum and your daughter, Sultana. Like, I've met her once. She's beautiful, smart
Yes.
girl. And you talk about Odin's 1,000 names. It helped you shape your understanding of today's tech-driven transformation. But I'd love to go into your story. The storm
Sure.
off of Tulum sounds like an initiation, not just for your daughter, but also for you. Can you take us back to that day on that boat in Tulum and what
Yeah.
was going through your mind as your daughter chose to stay up on top with you through the storm?
Yeah, sure. It was a very special moment, probably my favorite. And we've had some great father-daughter moments, but it's probably my favorite. And Sultana she's very smart and she's very mature for her age. She was 15 years old at the time. And my father's a little wacky, and her mother's awesome. She's beautiful and smart, and she's Russian, and so she gets sort of from both sides. So I have an annual birthday party called Ron. I'm not a narcissist. I just renamed the holiday. So, and I didn't do it. Somebody else did it for a party once, and it stuck. But we're having that party, and at that party, I have interesting friends from around the world, like yourself, who's always invited, and people come from all over, from Europe, from Asia, the States, and so I had probably about 150 people in Tulum that year. It was during the COVID like times, so everybody was happy to get out the country and jump around. And so it's a really cool, curated group of people. Everybody there is interesting. I don't care what you look like, what's your background. I don't care about your politics, your religion. You just have to be interesting. And so I'm very proud and honored that I have a lot of very interesting friends. Anyway, my daughter's there at 15 years old. And that's very young. This is an adult party, and we were drinking and cutting up. But the party's on a Saturday. On a Friday, we rented a boat to go from Tulum to Cozumel. But I could only put 35 people on the boat. So I handpicked, my best, closest friends. But all these people, like my friend Chris Copeland, he NBA star. I got Michael James, who's a rapper. I got bankers from Wall Street. And so it's a very eclectic, cool group. And we're on this boat and we're going across, and the captain comes up to me and he says, Ron, there's a storm coming up. And he shows me on the radar and he said, we could go around the storm, but it's going to take too long. We'd lose most of the day navigating around. He says, so what I recommend is we just go right through the middle of it, take about 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll be on the other side. And he showed me the radar and how it all worked. I said, okay. So he said, why don't we just get everybody to go underneath in the cabin? And then when we get through it, we'll party in Cozumel. I said, great. So I go up on the deck. I'm like, hey, everybody, need everybody to go underneath. We're going to go through this squall here, and it's going to be a little choppy and a little rough. And so everybody goes, and as everybody's shuffling down there, my daughter comes up to me and she goes, well, come on, Pop. Let's go down below. I said, baby, here in Tulum, a lot of people call me Odin with my blonde hair, so I kind of stand out. And I said, if they're going to call me a Viking god, I might as well act like a Viking god. I'm going to sit on the front of this boat and just hold on for dear life. And she looks at me and she goes, well, if you're doing it, I'm doing it. And then I had a friend there named Gianna. She's awesome, brilliant woman. She said, well, if y'all doing it, I'm doing it. So here I am between two women with big, long hair, whipping in the air. It was crazy. And we're holding on to the railing and just sitting on the front of the boat, and waves are crashing, lightning. It was intense. It was awesome, but it was weird. And if you ever been through a tornado, like when it's coming, you can feel the electricity in the
Yeah,
air.
I
That's
love
what it was
storms.
like. It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very intense. And so my 15-year-old daughter's there, and I'm just talking to her she wasn't panicking, but I was just talking to her to keep her mind engaged so she wasn't thinking so much about dying. And so, and so, so I said, yeah. And she asked me, she goes, Pop, why does everybody call you Odin? I said, and I just kind of started explaining. And I said, Odin's a very interesting character who gave up his eye for wisdom. So I appreciate the reference. And I said, Odin's famous for having 1,000 names. And I start walking through the names. And I'm sure most of you guys know this, but like our word for Wednesday is Odin's Day. Thursday is Thor's Day. Friday is Freya's Day. Tuesday is Tyr's Day. Tyr is Odin's brother, god of individual combat. And so 4 of the 7 days of the week are Viking gods. And so explain that to her. And I said, and Odin has Valhalla, the Hall of the Dead. And I'm kind of walking through. And I said, one of Odin's names is Valgut, the god of death. And my 15-year-old daughter looks me square in the eye in the middle of a damn storm and goes, when I get back to Miami, I'm going to get a boat with 100 men. and I'm going to make them row. And I'm going to say, oh, and they're going to say, G. And I look her in the eye and I say, well, baby, that's great. But you're going to need a whip like we had in the old days. You're going to have to beat them into rowing. And she goes, oh, Pop, my voice is my whip. And I'm like, holy moly, because you
Wow.
remember from Genesis, in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I was like, holy moly, that's her mind. She's wicked smart. And so, get through the storm, go underneath. Everybody's drunk. We go underneath. She jumps up on a table and says, I will sound off with Val. You will sound off with Goo. And all these powerful people, she goes, Val. And they all go, Goo, Val, Goo. It
Oh
was
my
crazy. I have it on
God.
video. It's amazing. So that was that episode. And then for her high school graduation, this kid's been all over the world. She lives well, and she speaks languages. What do you give somebody like that for her high school graduation? So I wrote her a poem, and
Yes.
I kind of, I'm proud of it. She loves it. It's on her wall, and it's all done up.
Yeah, it's
But
equal parts battle cry, philosophy, and a love letter.
it is, yes, perfectly said. And I find it interesting because I wrote it to my daughter, and it's not written like soft and fuzzy, like you said. It's a battle cry. And she, it- because I wanted to empower her as much as possible at that formative age about you don't have limits. The limits are you place on yourself, but go get them. And like at one part, I say, how do I say it? Don't live a life of luxurious retreat. Fight, get in there. Maybe I should pull it up so I can quote it. But basically, I say, if you act, maybe I'll pull it up right here. Live a life of bold action, not one of luxurious retreat, and you will taste the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. But defeat is far better than that poor, timid soul who makes avoiding failure their life's main goal. Because you've heard it before, but mediocrity is a disease. It's better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. That's part of it. So,
Mhm.
and
It's
like that's part of
rich.
the battle cry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's rich with mythology and fatherly pride. And as you talk, sometimes I can hear your New Orleans. I can hear your accent coming up.
Well, the next time we do this, I'll have a fifth of whiskey with me, and then I'll be talking like a coon ass in no time. I'll be talking
Oh
like
my
that.
God, I'm definitely gonna have you on again. There's so many avenues we could go into, but we're gonna have to wrap this up soon. I just wanted to ask 1 or 2 more things.
Mhm.
Well, with your graduation poem, what do you hope your daughter and maybe all of us take away from it as we face our own storms?
I'll tell you, authenticity, integrity, passion, and courage. That's the things I was trying to convey to her. Be brave. It's okay to fail. It's okay to suffer, but learn from it, grow from it.
Mhm.
So that was, yeah, got me all choked up right here. Look at
Aw. Well, I'm gonna
that.
go back to that again, with
Okay.
your daughter in that moment on that boat when she said, "My
Mhm.
voice is my whip." What
Yeah.
went through your mind when your daughter said that, and what did that moment teach you about her and about power?
So yeah, I instantly thought what I said. In the
Mm,
beginning, there was the word. I don't know if she's read that book. I don't know how she knows that knowledge, that wisdom, but and I was very proud that she understands that her brain and her will can drive the world. She doesn't need a man. She doesn't need anything. She just
mhm,
needs imagination and courage. And she's tough. She's hell to deal with. Trust me. Half the time I want to kill her. So because she knows everything, and she'll tell you she knows everything. But she's brilliant, and I'm proud of all my kids. My
mhm,
youngest is Isabella. She is the artist. She's so creative, so sweet. She has an awakened heart. Sultana
mm,
has a ruthless brain, but she has a heart too. But they're almost opposites. It's so cute to see them interact, and they've lived all over the world. They speak fluent Russian, they speak multiple languages, but they're so different. So yeah, Sultana's ferocious, man.
mhm,
And we'll see where she goes. And my son is kind of in the middle. He's super smart, super funny, but he's not trying to set the world on fire. He just wants to use his brain and express himself, and he does a great job with that. He's a great writer. But Sultana is just hell on wheels, man.
yeah.
So,
She's
so
always been because I remember you showing me picture I don't know if I think I did meet her once when she was in
yeah, I think you
town, and
did.
you were just always talking about her the
Yeah,
same way, her Russian mother, of course she is,
yeah,
you as a father, that kinda shaped a lot of it. So that
yeah.
moment must have shaped your view of generational strength. How did
It
it
really did.
in the age of digital dilution, it's like, yes.
Yes, she's grounded, and a
Mhm,
lot of that goes to her mom. Mom stuff is nails and smart, and brave. So she gets it from both sides. So, but yeah, I was very proud, and I still am. I mean, she's now graduating high college, and we're going to see where her adventure goes. But I think as a parent, what you want to do is give them the tools to be independent, to think for themselves, and to act for themselves. And I think again, mom and I have done a pretty good job of instilling that in the kids. So I'm proud of that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, this has been wonderful. We've been on here over almost an
Yeah.
hour and a half, and we could keep going on and on. We could go into so many different avenues, but I know you
Always
have a
happy to come back. Yep.
yes, I will have you back because
Yep.
you're just a wealth of knowledge and information. There's so many
Thank
different
you.
things we could cover. Now, you do have a part 2 of the 5th shot coming out. Is it gonna be the 6th shot or a 5th shot
Part
part
two.
2? Okay.
The sixth shock, I think, is going to be quantum mechanics and quantum computing.
Ooh.
I think because all the shocks are driven by technology
Mhm,
leaps. That's kind of my shtick. And so the fifth shock is driven by the confluence of AI, big data, and blockchain that are creating the foundational structure for a whole new global economy. We could get into that next time. And that's really explored more. I call for a post capitalistic economic system in the second part. So when the second part is prescription, what we should be thinking about and how we get to a more just world and leveraging the stack, not trying to destroy it, leveraging it, but controlling it and shaping it.
mhm,
So the sixth shock will probably be quantum, is my guess, quantum computing. So the fifth shock, part two, I want to see the response I get from part one so I can address questions that I'm getting through
mhm,
conversations like this.
mhm.
So it's not finished, but it's already longer than the part one as far as word count. It's
Well,
very fleshed out. It's not a theory. And I'm guessing I'd like to put it out probably end of summer once I gotten the world to tell me what works and doesn't work and what needs to be explained. But I'm excited. And so, yeah, I'm going to try to do more podcasts and get around. But yeah, I'd come back anytime. Hell, this has been great.
yeah.
And I wasn't sure if it was going to be a, kind of, it's all angels and,
Oh, no.
no, this is the real
No.
spirit. Yeah, this is
We
real
are in the
spiritual.
free dear yeah. No, it's not like, "Oh, fairy dust and
Yeah,
rainbows
yeah,
and
no, no, this
spiritual
is,
bypassing." No, it's the
no,
reality. It's 3D, but spiritually connected. It's grounded spirituality, I would call it.
I love it.
Yeah, so okay, so without giving too much away, what's one blueprint or practice we can start embodying now to protect our dignity and sovereignty? I promise to move from philosophy to protocol.
There is protocol. And so, for me, I call it sacred time where you unplug and ground yourself. The grounding movement, you go outside and sit in the grass or whatever, unplug on a regular basis for hours at a time. It's like meditation, but that's what I do. I start every morning. I read books, not even online. And even though I like reading online because I travel a lot. And so it's helpful, but I physically
I like
unplug.
physical books.
Yeah, I do too. I like the
Got it.
smell of them. I
It
like the
affects something in your brain. Didn't you write something here that reading
Mhm.
is so much different than what you read? My eyes hurt when I'm staring at a screen too much. I find I'm getting really exhausted by looking at a screen, but
Yeah,
books
that's
activate something else.
Marshall McLuhan who said, the medium is the message.
Mhm,
That's in the book, and that's what he said in the '60s, that the way, like, for me, when I read something, I have a strange brain. It's mine. I can quote chapters, passages if I read it. If
mhm.
I listen to it, I get the gist, but it's not the same.
No, it's
It's
not
not
the
as embedded in there. So practice rituals, sacred rituals of humanity every day, consciously,
yes.
and ground yourself in humanity at least for an hour a day is my suggestion. That's what I do. And then, then we don't have to get online and then we're clicking and jumping around. I'm trying to learn all this social media. I'm like,
Oh
this is
my god, and it
this
keeps
is the beast
changing.
I'm trying to get rid of. And so, but I need it. And so,
How many times I scream at my computer, "Change your password. Oh, you need to sign in again. Oh,
yeah.
it's a code."
Oh, yeah. So it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah,
And but that's my next time I'm on, I'll think through that and I'll bring some real protocols that I think we can practice as a species that will help guide us and help us make human sovereignty a reality in the future.
wonderful, wonderful. All right, well, before we go, I'd love for my audience to and our listeners to know where to find you, to learn more about you, and to find your books and, yeah, anything that you've got that's lighting you up right now.
Yeah, I would love that. So the Fifth Shock is available on all platforms, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. My girlfriend manages all that for me, so it's great, and she does a great job. I'm on X as I think it's Bienvenu Ron or Ron Bienvenu, I forget, but I can pull it up. Who am I? At
Bienvenu,
Bienvenu
Ron.
Ron.
Yep.
Yes. And Bienvenu means welcome in French. So it's a cool name in English, but it's kind of stupid in France. Ron, welcome. Great.
Welcome,
so,
Ron.
yeah, welcome, Ron. So, but yeah, I would love, to continue the conversation with your listeners, and I try to respond as much as possible. And, I love sharing the knowledge and my experiences. So I'd appreciate a like and a follow, and hopefully my followers will find this and follow you, because this is a fantastic show. I
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I will put that in the show notes. And the last question before we go, I ask all my guests, and we're gonna kind of merge this from what we're talking about today, and that's AI and the human and how, as a Homo noeticus, did I say that
Noeticus,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Noeticus.
Noeticus,
I've
yes.
got it all.
It's a
I've got it
mouthful.
all. Here's my notes.
Yes.
I gotta show this. I've got it all like pronounced out. I don't know if you can see it.
Noeticus.
Homo noeticus. Okay, so how in this new as this Homo noeticus, how can we what does it mean for you to live as an awakened heart?
Means integrity, originality, authenticity, honesty with yourself, most important, and passion. I think that's what Homo Nomadicus needs to be. It's not lazy. It's not. We're not going to just live online and click. This is not our life. And
Mhm,
so, what I said in that poem: be active, take risk, suffer. Don't see suffering as a terrible thing. See it as an educational thing.
mhm,
Much like Jesus. I mean, there's a whole passage on that. There's a whole chapter. It's personally my favorite chapter of the first book is exactly that. It's suffering. So it goes through the story of Odin and how he had his eye removed so he would get more wisdom. It shows Jesus as a archetype for the noble suffering. That's what it means to me, is that embracing life, not an illusion, not a program, not digital stuff. I mean, get in there, get dirty. I once gave a speech at Yale business school, and I was pretty cocky back then. This was in the early 2000s, and I ended the speech because it's business school. And I ended the speech with, to me, business is like sex. If you have to read a book on how to do it, you're not going to be very good at it. So I said, so get out of business school and go actually start a business and you'll learn. I didn't go to business school. I teach a class at Tulane's business school now, but I didn't go to business school, and I never took a computer class. I never took a finance class. So do it, to paraphrase Nike. Just do it.
Yeah.
Get in there
You
and don't
can
be
do it.
afraid.
The
Yes.
water boy. You can do
Yes, you
it.
can do
Just
it.
do it. You can do it.
Yeah, I once met Adam Sandler,
Yeah.
and I chided him for making us Cajuns look so stupid. He goes, "I didn't make you look stupid. I made you look smarter than you actually are." I was like, "Ooh."
Oh,
He's funny. So anyway, yeah, that's what I would say. Can I ask you a question before we go? We
sure.
got 2 minutes.
Sure.
If you could ask God one question, what would it be? You can save that answer for next time if you want.
No, I'm thinking, what if I could ask God was a question, what would it be?
Whatever version of God you have, of course.
The universe. I would want to know what the meaning of life is.
Suffering. I just told you.
Yeah. Yeah, suffering.
Recursive suffering. I mean, and they all do it. Buddha, all of them. So yeah, no, but that's a good question. But it's provocative. I use that line a lot
Okay.
in drunk bars. I'll mess with somebody's head. My question would be, who does God pray to? Is God the end, or does God have a God? I'd be very curious to know if my version of God is the only
Well, I
version
don't
of.
think it's a biblical version of God. I think
No,
it's
no,
a
no, not a
it's a u
biblical version.
yeah, it's a universal force that's
Yes.
all-encompassing, that's omnipresent,
Yes.
omnipotent. It's everywhere. It
Yeah.
just is.
Yeah.
Knows
No, no,
everything.
again, I'm not trying to make a particular
No, of course. No, of
idea.
course not. I'm just like it. I'm always stumped. I'm like, "Huh."
I
Ask
like I like
God
those
right
brain
now.
hacking questions. That's a brain hacking
Well,
question.
right
Yeah.
now on a Nancy level, what is my life purpose? What is going on? It's all gonna be okay, God.
Well, I don't know what your purpose is, but I think what you're doing is increasing capacity of the human race for
Yes,
thought and
I do.
understanding, and I think that's as noble a pursuit as any I can think of.
I do
So,
love doing this. I do it out
yeah.
of passion. Nice
Yeah.
to monetize it a little bit, but I would do it, y
Regardless.
yeah,
Yes.
regardless, because this is giving back to the world and
Agreed.
elevating voices like yourself.
And I appreciate it. I
Yes.
really do. Well, great. Well, this has been
Okay.
so much
Thank
fun. Thank
you.
you.
All right, Ron, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Nance.
All right, have a good
Okay.
rest of your day.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Awakened Heart Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, head on over to your favorite podcast app to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, you can reach me at theawakenedheartpodcast.com.